The movie begins with Nick Dunn stroking his wife Amy's hair and thinking about bashing her brain apart to find what secrets is she hiding. On July 5, 2012, Nick has a co-owned bar with his sister Margot. He goes there and Margot pours him a drink. Today is his 5th marriage anniversary, and he does not seem interested in going back home at all. Later, he goes back home and finds his cat sitting outside the lawn. He picks him up and enters his home. He calls for Amy, but she doesn't answer. When he goes to the living room, he finds the table flipped over, and the glass surface was broken. Nick then screams Amy's name. Nick calls the police. Then arrives Detective Rhonda and Officer Jim. They inspect the place, and Rhonda sees some blood on the kitchen counter. In the living room, there was a wall pictures of Amazing Amy, which is a book series written by Amy's parents. Rhonda was surprised to know that Nick is married to Amazing Amy herself. In the flashback, Nick and Amy go to a party held by her parents, and some media reporters were asking mundane questions from Amy about marriage. Nick then pretended to be a reporter and proposed to Amy by putting a ring inside a booklet. In the present day, Nick is brought to police station for questioning. Rhonda and Jim were finding it odd as he seems passive while answering the questions. They were becoming more suspicious when he didn't know if she had any close friends or her blood type. He goes to call Amy's mother, but then she wanted to talk with the detective. At the front counter of the police station, Nick finds his dad as he was wandering around the town after leaving the clinic. Nick takes him back to the clinic. Nick goes to Margot's home while police was investigating. There, a pregnant woman named Noelle, living in the neighborhood, visited and asked about Amy. She also claims to be Amy's best friend. During inspection, Officer Jim finds an envelope in the bedroom drawer marked as Clue 1. When Nick is questioned about it, Nick says it is something that Amy prepared as a part of a treasure hunt for their anniversary. The first clue leads him and Rhonda to Nick's office, where they find a pair of red panties. There they also find the second clue. Second clue led them to a brown house, but Nick goes to his dad's blue house. Then they all go there and find the third clue, but this time Nick is unable to decipher it. Later, Amy's parents fly from New York to attend the press conference for spreading awareness about her disappearance. There Nick appeals others for their help, but appears emotionless and makes himself look bad as he smiles next to Amy's poster. While talking with detectives, Amy's parents named some suspects such as Rand, Amy's ex-boyfriend, Desi Collins who tried to commit suicide after breakup, and Tommy O'Hara, who allegedly tried to harass her. At the volunteer center, Desi Collins appeared. Nick tried to come off as friendly, but no one bought his actions. One woman takes a picture. He asks her to delete it, but she refuses to do it. Consequently, all such actions hit the media, and he is presented as an unempathetic sociopath. Then again in flashback, we see in the 3rd year of their marriage, both Nick and Amy were hit by recession, and both lost their jobs. Amy allowed her parents to use her trust fund money, which is around $1 million. Later, he started losing interest in their marriage and spent most of his time on electronics. Amy thinks that he is making her look bad. To make matters worse, Nick's mom gets diagnosed with breast cancer, and then they had to move back to his hometown. This made her think that he doesn't need her anymore. They were frequently fighting, and one day during an argument over kids, Amy hit Nick in the chest, and Nick grabbed Amy and threw her against the staircase. He immediately looks shameful. In the present time, while Nick was sleeping at Margot's house, Nick gets a text message saying they are outside. Nick opens the back door, and a girl named Andy comes in and starts kissing. He makes sure that she hasn't told anyone about them, and about wanting to divorce Amy. She spends the entire night with him. Next day, Nick tries to slip her early in the morning, but Margot finds out and scolds him for not being careful. At night, Nick attends a vigil standing along with Amy's parents. This time he appears more sympathetic and hopeful. Andy is standing in the crowd and calls him an asshole. Noelle also walks by and asks Nick if he knew that she was 6 weeks pregnant. After this, reporters chase him all the way to the police car. After reaching home, Margot asks him about the pregnancy, to which he says he did not know she was pregnant, but that he did want kids and Amy didn't. Later Rhonda and Jim meet Nick back in his home and mention that a pool of blood was wiped in the kitchen. He also talks about Noelle not being Amy's friend, until Rhonda shows him the photograph of her with Noel's kids. Rhonda also hands him a document regarding credit card transactions, which he refused to be done by him. Rhonda also questions him about the recent increase in Amy's life insurance policy. Rhonda also gets a call confirming that Amy was indeed pregnant. At Margot's home, Nick was trying to decipher the third clue. Rhonda and Jim, while further investigating, finds out Amy bought a gun from a local dealer. They both then went to Nick's father's home and go to the basement. In the furnace, they find Amy's diary, which was half burned. Meanwhile, Nick also solves the clue, which leads him to Margot's woodshed, where a large pile of electronics are kept, and in between a box is placed. Again, go back to the morning of Amy's disappearance. We learn that Amy is alive and she staged everything. She is driving away from Missouri, and her hand is slightly bandaged. For a while, she was writing false information in the diary to implicate that Nick was abusive towards her, and she was afraid for her life. She also faked her pregnancy by befriending Noel and making her think that Nick was hurting her. Amy drained her toilet and let Noel drink enough fluids for her to use the bathroom. So Amy stole her urine and left a sample for the cops to find. On the day of their anniversary, as Nick goes on with his daily routine, she stages the crime scene. In order to hide herself, she changes her look and hides out in a small resort under the name of Nancy. She even hit herself with hammer in the face to prove her claim. There she befriends a girl named Greta and tells her how she found out that her husband was cheating on her. Back at Margot's house, Nick opens the box and finds Punch and Judy dolls, which suggested that she framed him. After realizing Amy's intentions, he went to New York to meet a lawyer who was following the case. He agreed to help him and gave him the information about Tommy O'Hara, so he can ask him some questions. Nick, when meets Tommy, he tells him that he met Amy at a party, and they had consensual sex, but later she framed him for raping her. Now he is a registered sex offender, and now he is unable to get a job. Next, he goes to meet Desi, but when he asks him about his side of the story about the suicide attempt, he closes the door on him. At the resort, Amy is playing golf with Greta and her friend. Amy is wearing a fanny pack at that time. At one point, she jumps and drops her fanny pack, which was full of money. Greta and his friend see it and next day rob her. Now that she is penniless, she calls someone from payphone. The lawyer goes to Missouri to help Nick and Margot. There Nick tells him about how he thinks she is framing her. He also admits to the affair, to which the lawyer suggests that he should tell the cops about it, so that there is one less reason to believe that he had any motivation to kill Amy. Nick also gives a TV interview, where he admits he was unfaithful to his wife, which will help him gain more points in public's eye. This was all his lawyer's idea. At the same time, Desi meets Amy in a casino. There she tells him about Nick being abusive. They also see the news about Nick accepting his affair, and Amy's parents' interview with a reporter. Desi takes Amy back to his home. Together, they watch Nick's interview, which Nick is watching with Margot. Nick convincingly comes off as remorseful for the affair, but he insists that he did not kill his wife. Margot checks the internet and sees Nick is already getting more love. Things then take an unfortunate turn. Rhonda and other officers show up at Margot's home with a search warrant, after getting an anonymous tip, but it was actually Amy, that there were loud noises coming from Margot's woodshed. They find all the electronics from the credit card bill. Both Nick and Margot are taken into custody. Rhonda reads to Nick the pages of Amy's diary, which is ended with, "This man may truly kill me." Now, at Desi's home, Amy learns that Desi has security cameras installed nearly all over the place. While he's out at work, she soaks her nightgown in wine and crawls to the camera, making it look like she's just been raped as she fakes crying. Nick and Margot are released on bond. Now that everyone is convinced Nick is a cold monster, Nick quietly whispers to himself, "Come home, Amy, I dare you." When Desi gets home, Amy seduces him and agrees to go with him to Greece. They go into the bedroom and start having sex. When Desi is caught off guard, Amy grabs a box cutter she was concealing and slashes his throat. She becomes drenched in his blood and leaves him to die. Nearly a whole month after Amy's disappearance, in his driveway he finds Amy, still covered in blood. The reporters and neighbors are shocked. As they are walking towards the door, he whispers to her, "You fucking bitch," before she collapses in his arms. At the hospital, Amy makes a story about how Desi kidnapped and raped her before she made her heroic escape. Rhonda asks her questions regarding the items in Margot's woodshed, but Amy ignores them. The reporters follow her and Nick home, happy that she's alive, and that Nick is now vindicated. However, Nick knows something is wrong. Amy lets him hop in the shower with her as she washes Desi's blood off her. And to make sure Nick's not wearing a wire, she all but outright states that she did frame Desi and murdered him to make her return seem heroic. Nick meets with Tanner, Margot, and Rhonda, who now trusts Nick about this revelation. Though without sufficient evidence, and with everybody on Amy's side, they cannot prove that she murdered Desi and framed Nick for her disappearance. Nick and Amy make their first public appearance together at the volunteer center, posing as a happily reunited couple. They are even set to have an interview together. Amy gives Nick a gift, which is a pregnancy test. It's positive. Nick knows this is another trick of hers to keep him with her, and he slams her head against the wall, calling her a cunt. She tells him she's the same cunt he fell in love with. Reluctantly, Nick joins Amy hand in hand for the interview. They break the news to Ellen, who is overjoyed and hugs Amy. Margot later finds out about the pregnancy and cries for her brother, knowing he is stuck with the real monster for another 18 years. The film concludes with Nick stroking Amy's hair again, wondering to himself just what she's thinking.